Hello, welcome to another edition of our continuing discussion. Last week we had a discussion about general philosophy, its definition, the major types, and how it is relevant. Today we decided to focus on one philosopher. Well, who else other than famous
Socrates.
Socrates? Yes, Simone.
Socrates, the father of philosophy.
Yes.
We'll be going into um, his ideas, his core beliefs. We're going to go into the trial of Socrates, also known as the Apologia, and he will be going into his beliefs and how they're important now.
Little bit about I'll be talking its applications, particularly in medicine, psychiatry, and a famous therapeutic modality called cognitive behavioral therapy. And just before, probably don't know, Simone is a grade 10th student, and she philosophy is her interest. She is not enrolled into any philosophy course yet. All right. So Simone, so thank you once again for this discussion. So, would you mind telling us about Socrates and what he stands for and his importance in general from your point of view? Please start. Thank you.
To start off, Socrates is known as the father of philosophy. Well, there were philosophers before him, like um, you could pretty much categorize classical philosophy, as in the stuff that existed within Greece and Rome, into two periods, which you might consider um, pre-Socratic and Socratic, because like that's just how important he is. He, for the most part, he didn't really write anything down. He didn't really believe that books were all that important. Well, he didn't believe that knowledge should be passed down, but the way he saw it, books are relying on something else for your knowledge, and if you can't remember something um, through your own mind, then it's probably just not important enough. Most of his writings come from three main sources. You have Aristophanes, who is a playwright, a comedic playwright. He wrote this play called Clouds, which kind of mocks Socrates as a small and insignificant figure. The word cloud referring to the way people thought his knowledge was esoteric and above everyday concern. A second source would be Xenophon, who is a famous uh, general and historian, but he was one of Socrates' more important students. He wrote a set of basically a set of Socrates' teachings, but its relevance, or at least how reliable it is kind of debated. And then you have his most famous student, Plato, who wrote, you could technically say, two works on Socrates: the Apologia, or the Apology. It's known as Socrates' Apology because he's not really. It's not an apology in the modern sense. It's an apology in the sense that he's explaining his actions and trying to defend them. Uh, it's it's a term that's been used for politicians now. You're not going around and saying, yeah, what I do is bad. I'm sorry. It's more like saying, I am doing this because, and you're giving reasons. Plato, he wrote the Apologia and the Republic, which is probably one of the most famous classical works out there. It's a set of 10 books. The earlier books is stylized depictions of conversations with Socrates, with the later books being more of Plato's own ideas, but with Socrates as a mouthpiece. Is there anything you'd like to
Okay, no,
add?
no, that's really great. So That's about Socrates as a whole. So I'm just wondering, I mean, if you could tell a little bit for people, those who do not have much knowledge of philosophy, so how Socrates differs from other contemporary philosophers, like no, contemporary, those who preceded him. So how what was new about him?
Well, what was new about him was basically um, his main focus, which is on justice, the pursuit of justice, what makes a good person. But in contrast to um, pre-Socratic people like Democritus, Diogenes, they were more focused in the nature of humans, like atomic theory and stuff like that.
Okay, all right. Hmm. I mean, uh, as far as I understand, um, Socrates is very relevant to uh, modern life as we are leading right now. He's probably one of the first persons who believed that we start from nowhere and then we gain knowledge step by step. His famous method has been sort of acronymed as Socratic method. I promised initially for discussing. Um, he is in fact a person who taught a particular way of asking questions, and through question you'll be gaining knowledge. So Socratic method uh, essentially consists of asking a series of questions so that we come to know the root cause of the issue. Usually, being a very adroit person or a very intelligent one, Socrates used to start with something that we know, and through that he goes to something that we do not know. For example, he will be starting with something about weather, because both of them know that the weather is good today. So how is the weather? And then a little bit about um, conditions surrounding the weather. Then probably how people suffer because of weather. Then what is suffering? Okay, like that. So there's a series of questions, all designed step by step, that leads to the ultimate answer. So do you agree with that?
What Socrates is really trying to do is make you think for yourself, because the core principle of Socratic questioning is to make you understand more about the way your thoughts are being processed. He'll ask you a question, and he'll continuously ask you to say, he'll continuously say, why? Why does this happen? What's your reasoning? And his main point
Hmm.
is to reach sort of sense of confusion where you both kind of agree that you don't really know anything. This whole thing happened after one of Socrates' friends. They went to the oracle at Delphi and they asked,
Mhm.
"Is Socrates the wisest?" And the oracle replied, "Socrates is the wisest." His
Hmm.
friend comes back, tells Socrates this, and Socrates replies with, "I know that I know that I know nothing, or I know that I do not know anything." And the main idea is that um, as a philosopher, everyone around him, they think that they know something. They think that they have an understanding of what the world is. But philosophers, Socrates, he has a leg up above around everyone else because he knows that he doesn't truly understand anything. Take different people, for example. He'd ask politicians, "How do you know what policies are right?" And he'd continue asking, why? And eventually they'd get mad at him, I don't know, kick him out. He'd ask
Yeah.
artists, painters, poets, why they do what they do, and eventually he concluded that they don't know what they do. They just act based on inspiration. He asked craftsmen, people who build tables, chairs. He asked them, "Do you really understand what you're doing?" He came to the conclusion that they knew how to build something, but they didn't know why.
Hmm.
And basically with Socrates, doesn't matter whether you're a friend or foe, whether you know something or whether you don't. He'll eventually ridicule you enough for you to realize that you don't.
Oh, well, I don't totally agree that ridicule is not the right word, but you are right. In one sense, that, he comes from this assumption that everybody knows the answer. It's only that there are many barriers. He tries his best to remove those barriers. All right. So what happens is that he keeps on asking some questions one after another, and in an argument, for example, he will be going from a very simple stage to a stage when his opponent keeps on answering the question, and he's in a position he feels a bit embarrassed because he answered the question which he didn't intend to answer or purport to answer in the beginning. So that's about impossible that earned few enemies. At the end, he had to die, isn't it? By drinking hemlock. Uh, yes, let me come back again to this concept of Socratic questioning. In medicine, particularly in psychiatry and psychology, cognitive behavior therapy used is one of those very effective methods of treating depression and a range of psychiatric illnesses. The central assumption in cognitive behavior therapy is that the way we think, it affects the way we feel. So indirectly, by changing our thoughts, we can change our feelings. All right. So assumption is all about what we are thinking. So the method, Socratic method, is applied to know your thoughts. Many times people don't talk usually what they're thinking. It doesn't come to fore. But using Socratic methods, those core beliefs would be more evident. The core belief, we call that. So asking a series of questions, as I said, from known to unknown, from simplicity to gradual complexity, people would be coming to an answer. And they are happy because the answer are theirs. It's not something that is spoon fed to them. So that's the bottom line. They own their answers. Right. So that's what Socratic questioning is so popular. So that's one of those classic examples of use of Socratic methods in medicine. There are many other sort of uh, insights that Socratic thinking gave to modern science. Most important, as I mentioned, is it's critical thinking. How to think critically, logically, is something that world owes to Socrates. So that's basically my take on it. Any other concluding remarks, Simone, you would like to have, um, or any thoughts?
I mean, when I think of Socrates, I usually just kind of think of his death more than anything.
Mhm.
His death being his final trial and the way he approached that, because I feel like a lot of people can kind of learn a lot from the way he answered his questions. Like, he understood his importance to the city. He understood that he was the only person in his position who could educate people like that, so he put his skills to use there instead of becoming something like a politician, which by all means he could do.
Mhm.
And at the end of his trial, he eventually was offered a way out because his friends came to him. He's like, we could dig a tunnel or something, help you escape. And Socrates' main argument against that was that he's lived his entire life by being just, by following
Mm.
the law, and he doesn't want to break it now just to live a few extra years. His um, belief was that if you're going to preach something or teach it, then you might as well live by your entire life, which is what he did, eventually drinking hemlock
Mm.
and dying.
Yeah. So fantastic. I think that in that note, I think we should end our conversation today. Socrates lived by his principles and he died by it, literally. Yes, he knew he could have escaped and lived few more years, but then the integrity it allowed him to do that. He even knew, he told his disciples who were weeping about death, about how hemlock will be initially making him heavier. Then there will be tingling sensations, and then heart will gradually stop, and you will die. So he had, because he read so much, he gave a very graphic description of that. So, so that's about him, Socrates. So thank you once again for watching us. Next time we'll be coming with yet another philosopher and try to enlighten you and to entertain you at the same time. Thank you for your time.